Hello and welcome to the latest installment of PSG Talking. I'm your host Ed, and on today's show, we're going to look back at the disappointing result against Dortmund. We're going to look ahead to how PSG can strengthen for next season and discuss the latest with Xavi Simons news. Before we get started, let me remind you that you can subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review if you listen on Apple Podcasts. Check out PSG Talk Extra Time over on Substack for premium PSG content. And as always, head over to psgtalk.com for all your Paris Saint-Germain news. All right, let's bring in my guest. Joining me today, we have a new voice on the podcast, but if you're a member of our Discord server, you'll know him well. Welcome to the show, Zaka. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Joining us all the way from the Netherlands. Zaka, I always like to ask new contributors when they come on, can you just share a little bit about how you became a PSG supporter?
Yes, well, thanks for having me, Ed. It's quite surreal to be part of this podcast after being a listener for so long. I've been a PSG fan since 2013, and I've become a fan on a pretty unconventional way. I played a lot of FIFA, and in FIFA 2013, 2014, they had a team with Cavani, Ibrahimovic, Lavezzi, and I really liked playing with the team. So I always played the team in FIFA. And in the summer, I was like, oh, who are they going to sell? Who are they going to buy? Because they will be in the next iteration of FIFA. And like that, I started watching the games. I started getting a connection with the players from the team. And that's basically how I became a PSG fan. And now I watch every single game.
That's amazing. Yeah, I always like to ask that question, and that's interesting. I always wonder that team with, you said, Cavani and Zlatan and Thiago Silva and Blaise Matuidi. I wonder if that team, if they played today's version of PSG, who would win? That'd be a lot of fun to watch that match. So anyway, Zaka, thanks so much for joining us here. We got to get to that result at the Parc des Princes. We're going to start there. Last Tuesday, Dortmund, they defeat PSG 1-0. It was a Mats Hummels header in the second half that pretty much sunk PSG. They were so close to the final, but they crash out. They don't reach it. They lose 2-0 on aggregate to Dortmund. When you look back at that match in Paris, what went wrong for PSG?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised by the outcome of it. Before the game started, I was pretty optimistic. I thought we had the better players, we were better in form, the better squad overall. But I thought our performance was pretty underwhelming, but also a little bit unfortunate. It's a game of inches. The tackle on Dembele near the 16-yard box, a couple of inches more towards the goal, it would have been a penalty. We've hit the post twice, we have the crossbar twice. So we've been also unfortunate, even though our accuracy hasn't been the best this season. But I think the tactics, if you look at the crosses that Dembele and Hakimi threw into the box, it was pretty clueless. At least that's what the impression I got from it. I think we're a bit playing against ourselves. Time was coming short at some point, and we just keep trying, but not really from a tactical standpoint, if you ask me.
Is it a mentality thing? Because you look at the two teams on paper, PSG had far superior quality. Is it a mentality thing to hit the post that many times, to not score when you have 30 shots? Is it just something in PSG's brain? And we've seen this year after year. Is it they just can't get over that hump? Is that what you chalk it up to?
Yeah, I don't know, because if you look at the Barcelona game, especially the second tie, we had a fantastic comeback, even though Araujo got a red card. We've overcome the visit for the first time in a UCL knockout match. So I don't know if it's that especially. And if you look at the players on our field, there are not many on the field anymore that have experienced the losses against Manchester United, the 6-1 against Barcelona. Yeah. But I feel like maybe we were a bit... we wanted it a bit too much, maybe. I don't know if we underestimated Dortmund.
That was going to be my next point, because there came reports that PSG, within the offices and maybe their social media team, but they were preparing for a trip to Wembley. They thought that this tie was a done deal and they were going to advance. Even after losing 1-0 in the first leg, they thought surely PSG could overcome that. So do you think it was just being overconfident, and they thought, oh, we already see ourselves in Wembley, and maybe that caught up to them?
Yeah, I think it's that. I don't think we underestimated Dortmund, but I think we were too eager and too far ahead of ourselves, thinking, "Oh yeah, now we need to reach the final. Now there's nothing that can stop us anymore." And when we lost the first game 1-0, and when we noticed that the defense from Dortmund was doing a really good job, I think we were feeling the stress, feeling the pressure, and that got to us. And it led to too many sloppy passes, sloppy crosses. And at the end, we were basically more playing against ourselves than against Dortmund, I think.
How much of that do you put on the manager? Because you look at the starting lineup, and you can talk about this a little bit. I didn't have a whole lot of issues. I thought maybe there's one or two players that maybe Luis Enrique could have maybe gone with instead, but I didn't have a whole lot of issue with his starting lineup. But if we're going to say that PSG maybe was a little overconfident, do you put that on the manager? I mean, should he have gone into when they knew that they were going to play Dortmund? Should Luis Enrique really have instilled in them that these guys can kick our ass and we need to focus? We don't assume anything. Do you kind of put a little blame on the manager there?
Yeah, I find that hard to say because I'm not in the tactical preview of the game that he does with his players. I'm not in the dressing room. If you look at the media performances Enrique did, I thought he was like he did a very good job keeping the boys aligned. We had a full week to prepare for the game, so I the things that I did see about Enrique, I didn't think he did anything wrong. And also the starting lineup, the substitutes he did. Yeah, of course, you can discuss if it's were totally perfect, but overall, I think he did a really good job.
Did you have any issues with the starting lineup? Whether tactically, do you think they came out maybe not on the front foot as much as they should have been? Do you think Gonzalo Ramos should have started? Should Mbappe played more centrally? In your opinion, what changes do you think could have been made?
Yeah, of course, it's easier in hindsight and looking back at it. For the first leg and for the second leg, I thought he fielded the best lineup we could have gotten, especially the first leg. The second leg, yeah, you could choose to start Ramos or Barcola. I think he made the right choice for choosing Ramos, especially in the form Ramos had, and that we needed to score. And you noticed the first leg that we kind of missed a central striker, so the typical number 9. I don't think I would have changed anything in the lineup. It's sad that Hernandez wasn't available for the second leg, but he chose Beraldo there. He went for Ruiz again over someone like Lee or Asensio or Ugarte. I think starting wise and subbing wise, he did the right job.
Yeah, that injury to Lucas Hernandez, it hurt PSG against Dortmund, and it's going to hurt PSG at the start of next season because what was it, maybe 6-8 months he might be out. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think we're going to talk about looking ahead. I think a defender is certainly going to be a position that PSG will have to strengthen. I'm with you, and as I said, I don't have a lot of changes. There's been a lot of criticism toward Fabian Ruiz, but I don't know. You could put Kang-In Lee there, but that leaves you a little weak. Beraldo, he's the one who didn't mark Mats Hummels, and you almost can't blame Beraldo too much because he just got here like a half hour ago. Like I can't expect him to really go up against a 35-year-old veteran like Mats Hummels, who had 2 man of the match performances against PSG. It's a disappointing result, and maybe you could talk about this. For me, I think it's a missed opportunity. Unlike past seasons, PSG got a lot of luck that they never ever get, and I just thought they were staring the final right in the eyes, and they
yeah.
they blinked, and so missed
And I think
opportunity.
that is the problem that the players had. I think after they had the victory against Barcelona, I think they felt the same. Like, this is a golden opportunity. Now we need to profit from it. And I think once they noticed that Dortmund wasn't as easy as they maybe had expected, that's where the problem started.
Absolutely, the problem started, and it really comes down to those missed opportunities. Dembele, Ramos, Mbappe, everyone was hitting the
Yeah.
post or sending the shot just wide. Do you want to talk about the PSG attack? What went wrong? With Mbappe moving on, do you think PSG have a nice cohesive unit that you're happy with next season, or do you think maybe a signing needs to come in? Because we did not score goals. 180 minutes against Dortmund, 0 goals. It's a problem.
Yeah, that's what surprised me the most. Last summer we spent 250 million on new attackers. We brought in Ramos, Kolomuani, Asensio, Barcola, Dembele. We have the best player in the world, the best attacker in the world, and Mbappe. And I truly can't remember a last UCL knockout tie where we didn't score in either the home game or the away game, especially at the Park. Normally we score at least one or probably maybe even two goals, but this time we didn't even score one. So um, shooting accuracy always has been a problem for us. I think if you look back at the final in 2020 against Bayern, um, we probably even were the better team on field, but all our shots were just on the wrong side of the post. This season, if you look at Dembele, it's unbelievable how often he has inches away from the post, but always seems to tend to be on the wrong side of the post. Um, but what I saw against Dortmund was the defense really went back into their own 16 yard. The 16, yeah, I don't know if it's 16 yard. It's in the Netherlands, it's 60 meters, but it's probably like 8 yards or something. I don't know what it is in English. But they were in their own box defending, and every cross that we did, it was so poorly. It looked a little bit like chickens without heads who were putting in the crosses. It was too easy to defend for the Dortmund defenders, and yet that way we can't put Ramos in his strength. So
I'm glad that over in the Netherlands you have the chickens without heads comparison. That's
yeah, I
funny.
knew it was it existed in English as well.
I don't know what it is in centimeters and all that, but I know that reference. That's funny.
Yeah.
Let's stick with the attack for a minute because Kylian Mbappe, he was largely absent in this tie. Very few shots, really wasn't that dangerous. Just
Yeah.
was another guy out there, really. You wouldn't, if you had someone who would never watch football and you said, that right there is the best player in the world right now, they'd be like, seriously? That's how poor I thought his performance was.
Yeah.
And then we're learning here this week that you never know with these reports, but what it's saying is that he signed a contract with Real Madrid back in February, and we know since the news came out in February that he's been in the lineup, out of the lineup, mostly in Ligue 1 matches. But just do you think this performance against Dortmund? Do you think Mbappe was impacted by that signing of the contract, by Luis Enrique saying we need to prepare for life after Mbappe? Do you think all of this external stuff ultimately weighed on his shoulders enough that it impacted him against Dortmund?
Well, I don't know if it impacted him on a negative way, but I'm sure it didn't impact on him in a positive way. I thought even at the Barcelona tie, he let me down. I expected so much more from him, especially if you look at the criticism Mbappe receives. It's always, oh, he's doing it in the Farmers League, he's doing it in France and League One. He never shows it on the big stage. Well, he has done it at the World Cup. That's where you get the recognition for all your work. Well, now he has the big European stage. He's at the quarterfinals, the semifinals, but yeah, he didn't show his worth. And I think um, Mbappe is, at least how I see him, a true competitor, someone who loves to win. I'm sure he wants to win the Ballon d'Or, for example. So I expected, no matter what's playing on the background with the contract situation, with being in and out of the lineup, I thought no matter what happens, he will be fierce enough. I don't know if it's the correct word, but he will be able to perform at this stage of this competition. Yeah, but it didn't happen. Especially the first leg against Dortmund, and I thought that counted for the entire team. It was so passive. Like I thought, do you guys know that it's a semi-final? It was really a letdown, and I expected way more from Mbappe. But what the reason is for it, yeah, I find it hard to guess.
Yeah, you mentioned the Ballon d'Or. I don't know how he's going to win that when I think his primary competition is going to be in the same squad with him at Real Madrid. And we saw what Vinicius Jr. was able to do against Bayern Munich. He was on that big stage, semifinal, and look how well he performed. And so Mbappe is now going to be his teammate. They both prefer being on that left wing. We've seen Mbappe struggle as like a striker. So I've said it in previous podcasts. We don't need to get into it too much, but I think he's going to find life at Real Madrid far different than at PSG. There's going to be a lot more pressure, and now Real Madrid are likely going to win the Champions League. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the bar. If you're going there, the bar is Champions League and Ballon d'Ors. and maybe he wins the Champions League, but I don't know if he's going to be quote unquote the guy. Because Vinicius Jr., I think there was someone had tweeted out that Vinicius sits at the same table as Erling Haaland and Mbappe, and I tweeted out, well, I think right now he's at the head of the table.
Yeah.
I think of those three players, he might be the best one, just given his recent performances on the big stage. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I still think, and maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm a Paris Saint-Germain fan, but I still think Mbappe is the best player in the world, better than Haaland, better than Vinicius. But for this year, Ballon d'Or, yeah, he really lost a shot at it. Of course, we still have the Euros, and you don't know what happens in the summer. But I don't think he's going to win the Ballon d'Or this year. Whilst we're now in the new era without Messi, without Ronaldo, he had all the chances, especially if you look the draw we had after the group of death for the Champions League against Dortmund. Yeah, the path was clear. I really saw that fairy tale like, oh, his last year for Paris Saint-Germain, his home city, the first UCL in Paris. He is one of those players that can decide a game in a couple of seconds all by himself. But yeah, we hoped and expected it to see it during those quarterfinals and semifinals. But yeah, he didn't show himself.
Football is a cruel game. I'm with you. You
Yeah.
saw this fairy tale story. Even if PSG didn't win the Champions League, just if he could get PSG to the final, and now we know it would have been against Real Madrid, how amazing would that have been?
Well,
And by some miracle, PSG wins. Like, it'd be
that would have been
incredible.
amazing, but if we were to lose against Real Madrid, oh, that would be a nightmare. I can already see the stories how Madrid wins their 15th Champions League and we fail to win our first, and then the best and the most valuable player in the world goes on a free transfer to Madrid. Man, I don't think my heart could have taken that.
I mean, and it's interesting. We just talked about Mbappe signed his contract in February. How odd would that have been? A PSG Real Madrid final, and PSG's best player has a signed contract with the team that
Yeah.
he's playing against. That's very strange.
Yeah, I do think if we were to reach the final and we played against Real Madrid, then I'm sure it would have impacted the performance by Mbappe.
Yeah.
You must be thinking about what am I going to do if I score? Am I going to celebrate?
Hmm.
How it surely will impact him, but sadly we don't. We won't ever know.
Let's look ahead to next season. We know that PSG are going to be without Mbappe. We've talked a little bit about the defense, but in your opinion, where are the holes in this squad? Where does PSG need to strengthen? And if you had any names that you want to mention, go for it. But yeah, just look ahead to next season. How would you fill some of the holes in the squad?
Yeah, I think to answer that question, a good starting point is to look at the starting lineup. Our first leg against Dortmund. I think everyone agreed that that was basically our strongest lineup that we could field at the moment. And if I look at that lineup, for reference, it was Donnarumma, Mendes, Hernandez, Marquinhos, Hakimi, Zaire-Emery, Vitinha, Ruiz, Barcola, Mbappe, and Dembele. I think the biggest room for improvement is on the position of Fabian Ruiz. He's based. I think he's the worst, the least good player in the bunch. So I think our midfield can surely use an upgrade, especially in the defensive midfield. Vitinha has the creativity, but we got Ugarte for the defensive midfield. But he started the season amazing, but at the end of the season he kind of dipped in form. So I think we need something in midfield, especially in the defensive midfield. Hernandez has got injured, probably 7 to 8 months before he's recovered. Well, we got the kind of same report for Kim Pember last season, but he hasn't played the entire season, so it's not someone you can count on for next season. Yeah, and Mbappe will leave, so the three spots in the lineup I think that need the most improvement is, yeah, with the exit of Mbappe, you're gonna lose 40 goals a season. Um, I know we got Ramos and Kolomouani, but not saying that we need a new striker, but I don't know if they're gonna bring 40 goals a season, especially not Kolomouani in the current form he is in. Yeah, I think you really need an improvement for the midfield, especially the defensive midfield, and probably a new centre back. Those will be the three positions I think that need strengthening the
Yeah.
most. And then you got a couple of positions like the left back, and probably the left winger and right winger and the goalkeeper. and where you need some depth, because Navas, Rico, and Letelier all out of contract, so you probably need some depth in the goalkeeper. Left back, if Mendes is injured, we basically got no other left back, especially not with Hernandez also out. The same goes for Barcola and Dembele. Yeah, we got players who can play there, like Lee, like Asensio, but probably a backup winger who can play both on left wing and right wing is also welcome.
I'm with you, and I think you highlighted all of the holes. The defense is most concerning, with Lucas Hernandez not being available, being injured for a while. I don't think we're going to see Kimpembe at a high level. It's just hard to imagine. I hope nothing for the best for him. I hope that he can stay at PSG, because I think he could go on and be like a Thiago Motta and maybe do some coaching or something, because he loves the club so much. So I think, Lenny Euro, we always talk about him as potential option, and there's a lot of league defenders that you could look at. Midfield, again, with Fabian Ruiz, he's a good player. I think he's probably a bench player and someone you could bring in. I don't know if I like him as a regular starter, so I think looking at a midfielder with some size, I think would be ideal. But those players are hard to find and very expensive when you do. So, and then when you look at the attack, I do wonder about Colomwani. He did not have a great season, but I wonder we saw it this season with Neymar and Messi moving on. It was sort of addition by subtraction. I thought the team played more cohesively. So I do wonder if Mbappe, when he does depart for Real Madrid, I wonder if that opens things up a little bit for Colomwani, that maybe it takes a little pressure off and maybe he could play a little bit freer.
Yeah, if you look at like one of the recent games against Lyon where we won 4-1, Mbappe didn't play that game if I remember correctly. And it was a super fun game to watch. Ramos scored twice. I think Barcola scored. I'm not sure. I think Beraldo scored, but it was a super fun game to watch.
So yeah, I think you're right. Just in terms of pure goal scoring output and the danger that Mbappe puts, especially on Ligue 1 teams, it's going to be hard to replace him. But I think this can still be a potent attack. I think it could be an attack that's entertaining, more free flowing. They're
Yeah,
not going to always be looking for, we don't know what to do. Hey, Mbappe, do something. Like, I think it's going to be a more cohesive unit.
yeah. I got trusted, especially with Enrique's as coach. Maybe if we get some creativity in the midfield, maybe Simons if he's coming back. I don't think we need to worry too much. I think we will fine in League One, um, but in the big stage like the Champions League, yeah, it's really helpful to have that player that can decide a game on his own, and that's something that is very rare. Mbappe had it, and I don't think it's easy to replace that.
I would agree with that. Our friends over at PSG Hub, there's a couple of different attackers. I'm not even going to attempt. Maybe you can say the attacker from Napoli. We'll just go with Kvara as his name.
Kvaratskhelia.
There you go. There you go. So he's that rumor has heated up quite a bit. Victor Osimhen, he's been rumored for a while. Rafael Leao has been rumored as Bernardo Silva, who I think has a reasonable buyout that PSG may be able to activate if he's interested in
Yeah,
coming.
50
So
mil pounds I read, but I also read that he's very interested in going to Barcelona.
yeah, well,
And
50
I mean,
million.
we tried 2 seasons already for Silva, and he didn't really show that he was willing to come to us. So I don't know if I will be too happy with that.
And I think that he does a lot of what Vitinha does right now. Like, I think we have a younger Bernardo
Yeah,
Silva
he's
in
more of an
Vitinha.
attacking midfielder, and I think if you look to replace Mbappe, you need someone with a more concrete goal threat, and I don't think Silva is the person.
It's interesting. Those are the names right now, but of course, there's always going to be names bubbling up in the transfer market. I think you did a great job last summer of just pulling together all of the rumors, and I don't know. Are you going to plan to do that again? We shared it a couple of times over on our Substack, but are you going to kind of track all the rumors again?
Oh, I have no plans for it, but if people want me to do it, I'm more than happy to do it. But I think that showed that we had like somewhere between 50 and 60 transfer targets, and at the end only 10 came, and most of them, like 30 or 40 of them, stayed at the same club. So it really showed that most of the news and the rumors that are shown, it's mostly just clickbait.
Yeah. So we looked back at Dortmund, and then we kind of looked to the future or what signings PSG need to make, and holes in the squad. Just when you, I just before we move on, because we do want to talk about Xavi Simons to wrap up the show. Just when you look back at this season, and we have a really big match coming up in the Coupe de France against Lyon, but just kind of thinking about the season as a whole now that the Champions League is over, just maybe share a few thoughts on how you thought the team progressed this season, maybe a couple players that stood out to you, maybe players that PSG should consider moving on. Just kind of talk about the season as a whole, just looking back.
Yeah, I think overall it has been a great season, a more than great season. It exceeded all my expectations. If you look back at the summer, some people, even contributors to this podcast, said, "Yeah, I don't know if we will reach top 3 or top 4 in League One." But I think we did amazing. We won the Trophée des Champions. We won League One. We're in the final for Coupe de France. We reached the semi-final of the Champions League. There's not much more you can do. Yeah, if we were to win the Coupe de France, then we basically had a perfect season on one game. We were one game short of winning the Champions League, and all the other prizes we have won. So I think we've did amazing this season, especially if you look. Messi left us, Neymar left us, Ramos left us. We had 11 new signings. We have the youngest team in the knockouts of the Champions League. So overall, I think we did a really good season. I won't say man of the season is Luis Enrique, but I really think he did an amazing job, especially if you compare him to Galtier and Pochettino, who we had the last 2 seasons. And if you talk about on-field performances, yeah, Vitinha of course deserves a shout. The comparison between last season and this season has been amazing. One of our best players of the season. So that gives somewhat hope for players like Kolo Muani and Ugarte, where it might be hard to come in a team in the first season, but you also always have the second season to prove yourself. And I thought Lucas Hernandez, someone where we didn't expect too much from, especially with his injury history. I think he was the most solid player we had until the injury against Dortmund. Donnarumma, he was shaky. He had good moments, especially his shot stopping, but also some very bad moments. I remember you calling for a replacement when he get that red card for kicking a player against the head. Yeah, Mendes, he came back from injury, not as good as I hoped he did. Hakimi had ups and downs. Marquinhos, overall, I don't think he's the player we talked the most about, but he had a pretty solid season. Zaire-Emery, of course, shown great growth this season. Ruiz surprised us, I think, even though he was arguably the worst player on the field against Dortmund, the second leg. I think he did a pretty well season overall. Dembele, yeah, his accuracy is so horrendous. Um, it's unbelievable how good he is, but at the same time, how, yeah, I won't say useless. But he's so close all of the time, but always on the wrong side of being lucky. So that's just horrific. Um, for me, Barcola was the player that I got most excited about. I think we have a great potential from him. Um, Ramos didn't get too many chances, but he's shown that he's very eager. So that's very promising for next season. Mbappe didn't always have the most convincing season, but even though it wasn't his most convincing season, he still scored 40 goals this season, and he has saved us so many times. So for me, it's still the best player in the world. Yeah, and Kolo Muani, for me, it's a little bit the flop of the season. I expected way more from him. 95 million. I know it's not just about the price tag, but he got more chances than Ramos, especially in the first half of the season. But he hasn't convinced me the slightest. So I think it's gonna be really hard for him to do better next season. Yeah, and then you have players like Lee, Ugarte, Asensio. They all had their moments, especially Lee in preseason. I think we were most excited about Lee, but during the season it kind of dipped. But he also had South Korea and the Asian Games where he went away from. Ugarte started very well, but his form also dipped. Yeah, Asensio was up and down. I think okay for a free transfer. So, and I think that's most of the lineup. Danilo started the season very, very well. I was really impressed with his level beginning of the season, but also his form dipped a bit. So yeah, it was an up and down season, but as a collective, I think we did a very great job.
Well said. I'm lucky that you went through all the players. I think this is certainly a season in transition for PSG. We mentioned all those new signings that came in. We knew that Mbappe was going to be leaving for most of this season. Actually, we started the season not letting him travel to the preseason tour. So the way I see it, like when you look at Luis Enrique, we didn't have all that drama that we've had in recent season. He was really able to kind of keep a lid on things, and he owned some of the big decisions that he did make, with, subbing Mbappe off. And he just came out and said, we have to prepare, and this is the way it is. So when there was a moment for controversy, I like that he owned up to it and said what was on his mind and moved on. And I like that. It wasn't, he didn't stay quiet and let all the rumors come out. He addressed the rumors and moved on. So I thought from that perspective, Luis Enrique is exactly the type of manager that we've been wanting. You mentioned Gaultier and Pochettino. We've had some managers who have struggled with some of the egos in the squad. And I think Luis Enrique came in, he's won the Champions League. He knows what he's doing. He's managed a national team. So I think he garners a lot of respect in the dressing room. I mentioned the team. This is a season in transition. We had some really great standout performances and players. We talked about Barcola. He's one of my favorite players of the season. Vitinha has taken his game to another level. Donnarumma, you mentioned I wanted him to be replaced, but he's shown, especially in that Dortmund match, he made a fantastic save, or else the loss could have been even worse. So he's
Yeah,
proven to be world-class shot
he
stopper.
has
But
his qualities for sure.
absolutely. So maybe we get a backup keeper this summer that can kind of keep the pressure on him and keep him improving. We saw Zaire-Emery. He turned 18 years old, which is just crazy. We've seen him continue his development. So there's a lot to be excited about. It was for a transition season to reach the semifinals and win 3 trophies. I'll sign up for that all day long. I think if at the beginning of the season, if they said, "Hey, Zaka, if you could have PSG reach the semifinals and you'll win 3 domestic trophies," I think you'd sign up for that all day long, especially this season.
100%. My
100%.
expectations were to not end up in the Europa League. So, so then reach the semi-finals of the Champions League. Like I said, it exceeded all of my expectations.
May PSG never play in the Europa League. That is our one wish.
Yeah.
I do want to wrap up the show. Let's talk about what's going on with Mr. Xavi Simons, because he's a player that we're all counting on for next season. I think I even said after the Dortmund match, I'm ready for the Xavi Simons era to begin at PSG. And then the report started coming out that he's really not motivated. He's not very keen on a return to Paris, and that his current club that he's out on loan to, Leipzig, that they would like to keep him. But then you also have some Premier League clubs. I don't know, maybe a Chelsea or Arsenal. They're interested in him. Barcelona, where he was in their academy, they're interested in bringing him back. What do you think is really going on with Xavi Simons? Do you think PSG should stand strong and keep him? Because he is under contract, I believe, until 2027. There was also news that came out that said if PSG were to, let's say, they do get a bid from Arsenal for 100 million, that a significant part of that would go to PSV, which is, of course, the club that he went to, that PSG sold him to, but then brought him back for, I think it was 4 million. So a transfer right now doesn't seem ideal for PSG. They really could use him. So I don't know how a loan helps PSG. So what do you make of this mess of a situation?
Yeah, it's really hard to predict it because I don't know the contract. Um, One thing I'm pretty confident about is that Xavi Simons will have some leverage himself. His contract at PSG ran out. He went to PSV, and even though it was a contract at PSV, he inserted a clause that PSG could get him back. So um, he surely has done that with beneficial details for himself. It surely wasn't a goodwill something against Paris Saint-Germain. I don't believe he won't be the one who benefited the most from it. I do think he really likes Paris, though. If you look at his Instagram bio, it's still PSG first, and then RB Leipzig. Many lone players don't even do it.
Yeah, Ethan at PSG fan club Boise tweeted out that Xavi, he actually follows Paris No Limit, the official PSG account, Paris Inside, a couple other PSG accounts. So he's sticking with the news about the club. So that, to your point, he's
Yeah, I think if he didn't want to be at Paris Saint-Germain, when his contract went up, he could have gone to PSV Eindhoven and gone to any other club, but he decided to come back to Paris Saint-Germain. Yes, whilst being loaned out, something I could understand at the moment when we still had Mbappé and Neymar at the club. I think he likes the culture. I think he has friends over here, people like Zaire-Emery, which he played with in the youth. But what is going to happen? Yeah, I find it very hard to predict. I don't see us selling him because maybe there's something with the financial money going to another club. But also because I think if we can keep him, we prefer to keep him because he's such a great quality player. Someone who I also think fits in the style Enrique wants to play. So I don't think it makes any sense to sell him. Yeah, maybe if Simons has some leverage himself, he can opt for another loan. But I think being able to play at Paris Saint-Germain, the team that just reached the semi-final, who's going to play in the Champions League yet again, I wouldn't know why you wouldn't want to play there. I understand it going to PSV Eindhoven, going to Leipzig, gradually going to a bigger stage. But I think his time has come to Paris Saint-Germain. But yeah, I don't know the contract, and I'm pretty sure it will be full of surprises.
I'm writing a piece about this on our Substack, and you look at his transfer history. It's odd. It's very odd. Like, he was at the Barcelona Youth Academy, then he came to the PSG Youth Academy, and then, like you said, he went to PSV Eindhoven, and he was close. I think at the time he was negotiating with PSG. We thought he was going to sign, and then nope, I'm actually going to PSV. And then he
Yeah,
goes there, and we think, oh, we lost him for good. But then this clause comes up that PSG can actually bring him back for 4 million, and so they do that. But then immediately loan him back out to Leipzig. It's very strange, his just trajectory, but there's no question that he is one of the most exciting young players in all of Europe and all of world football, and PSG would be foolish to not want to bring him back. And I think the reports that I'm seeing is that they do. Luis Enrique does see him as a primary contributor for next season. Everyone at the club wants him back. If
yeah,
PSV is going to get a large amount of the transfer fee, I don't think PSG have any interest. And I think a couple of transfer gurus have said that PSG are not interested in, even if it's for 100 million, they're not interested in the transfer fee because they wouldn't get all of that
yeah. I
alone.
don't see us
Yeah.
selling him. I think he either goes on loan because he wants to and he has some
Mhm.
kind of leverage in his contract, or we keep him and hopefully he play. I think he will fit our style perfectly. And if you look at his transfer history, he has Raiola,
Mhm.
who has sadly died, but the super agent was managing him since he was not even 10 years old. So I'm pretty sure he's pretty professional in negotiating those kind of contracts.
And no one, like you said, no one knows what's in the contract. Someone had mentioned, I'm forgetting the journalist, but said that in terms of leverage, maybe his leverage is he gets to choose the team that he goes to loan. But I think PSG would have to agree to send him on loan. I can't imagine PSG would sign any contract with him that says you can go and do whatever you want and we're here. Like, I just don't think that's the contract they
Yeah,
would
well,
have
they,
signed.
they didn't have too many choices because he was at PSV Eindhoven and he had no contractual obligations with PSG anymore.
None.
And
Right.
PSG could get him back, a player who was worth 80 million for just somewhere around 4 million. So I could see PSG accepting some not so favorable conditions,
Mm.
because the alternative was not having him at all.
But if you have to give, and I don't know what the percentage, but I don't know if you have to give 70%, 60% of the transfer fee to PSV. I guess something's
Yeah.
better than nothing, but
Yeah, but I've also read, and like I said, I don't know what's in
Mhm.
the contract exactly, but I've read that the rumor was they only needed to pay a part of the transfer sum to PSV Eindhoven if he
Mhm.
was sold before 2025.
That's
After
right.
that,
That's
no
right.
longer. So they could also opt for loaning him out another season, then selling him and get the
Mm.
full potential. So, but like
Mm.
I said, it's all guesswork from all those rumors. It's yeah.
Yeah, I think if we boil this down, you're right. PSG could stand strong and say you're under contract. You could come back if they have that kind of leverage. Or I think the more likely scenario is maybe if he truly, truly does not want to be at PSG, you loan him again, and then when he comes back, then you get that massive transfer fee
Yeah.
of over probably 100 million at that point.
And
It's
Fabrizio Romano said he will. The decision will be clear before the Euros.
mhm,
Well, it's in 1 month from now. He missed the preseason last time because he was still at PSV Eindhoven. He went to RB Leipzig pretty late.
mhm.
I think he wants to do the full preseason this time. So I think we will know between now and a month. So
Well, Zaka, now that you are an official PSG Talk contributor, you're there in the Netherlands. I'm going to need you to get with Xavi Simons, convince him, do some work over there, see what you can do for us.
I will try my best. I truly hope he plays for us next season. But like some other PSG fans said in the Discord, I only want him to play for us if he wants to play for us himself. So
Mm.
the ball is in his court.
I intend to agree with that, but then you look back and, there was a time that Neymar didn't want to be here and we forced him to honor his contract and it turned out pretty well. Like he led us to the Champions League final. I think
Yeah,
Marco Verratti at one point wanted to leave for Barcelona and
yeah,
we made
yeah.
him
I do
stay.
think he will be a perfect addition to our current squad and play style.
He would be perfect. He would slot right in. He's everything that we need. He's young, he's fast, he's skilled. He's a budding superstar, and the hits keep coming. The Dortmund loss, and then we find out Mbappe was under contract with Real Madrid since February, and then now this. As I say, almost every podcast, it is not easy being a PSG supporter. PSG will be just fine. They will attract big names. I think we have a proper sporting project. So if you take nothing else from this, just know that PSG are not going to wither away once Mbappe leaves and never compete for the Champions League. The sporting project is in place. We've got some really young, awesome, very talented players. There's a lot to be excited about for next season, and hopefully that includes Xavi Simons. We'll have to see. Zaka, thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure. We'll have you back on real soon. And if you're listening to this, you should just know, obviously, English is not your first language, but you were amazing. And so we'll definitely have you back on. So thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.